1911. Type 1. The original M1911. John Moses Browning designed the pistol that would become the M1911 specifically to answer U.S. military demand for a more powerful sidearm following reports from the Philippine-American War that the Army's existing revolvers lacked sufficient stopping power against determined attackers charging at close range through genuinely dense jungle terrain. Colt won the resulting government trials against several competing designs, and the pistol entered official service in 1911 chambered in .45 ACP, a cartridge Browning developed alongside the pistol using the same locked breech, recoil-operated action still copied across the firearms industry well over a century later. That original design carried a straight, checkered mainspring housing, a long trigger, and small, low-profile sights, a genuinely Spartan combat pistol built without a single unnecessary feature added purely for shooter comfort. American forces carried that exact original pattern through the entirety of the First World War, establishing the pistol's reputation for genuine reliability under the exact kind of brutal trench warfare conditions that had already exposed so many other contemporary firearms designs as fundamentally unreliable in actual combat use. Browning's underlying locked breech tilting barrel mechanism proved so genuinely sound from the very first production run that engineers would spend the following century simply refining the surrounding ergonomics rather than ever needing to replace that core operating system entirely. 1911. Type 2. The M1911-1. Battlefield reports from the First World War identified several genuine ergonomic shortcomings in Browning's original design, prompting the U.S. Ordnance Department to formally standardize a revised pattern in 1926 under the new designation M1911A1, a genuinely careful bureaucratic process that took several years of testing and evaluation before the Army finally committed to those specific final changes. Army Testing Board specifically solicited direct feedback from combat veterans who had actually carried the original pattern through the war itself, treating first-hand soldier experience as genuinely valuable input rather than relying purely on laboratory testing conducted far removed from any real battlefield conditions. Engineers shortened the trigger, cut visible relief grooves into the frame behind the trigger guard, widened the front sight for genuinely faster target acquisition, and replaced the original flat mainspring housing with a distinctly arched version specifically designed to point more naturally in a shooter's hand. None of those individual changes altered the pistol's fundamental locked breech operating mechanism in any way, meaning the M1911A1 remained mechanically identical to Browning's original design while genuinely improving how the pistol actually felt and pointed for the average soldier gripping it. That specific 1926 pattern became the definitive American military sidearm profile for the next several decades, remaining the exact configuration American forces carried through the Second World War, Korea, and well into the Vietnam War before any further official design changes ever followed from Ordnance Department planners. Soldiers issued the earlier original M1911 pattern still already in inventory when the A1 upgrade arrived, typically kept carrying those older pistols right alongside newer A1 production too, since the government saw no genuine need to recall and retrofit perfectly functional existing sidearms simply to match the newly standardized ergonomic pattern. 1911 Type 3. The Wartime Manufacturers. Colt alone couldn't possibly meet the explosive wartime demand for M1911A1 pistols once America fully entered the Second World War, forcing the government to contract 4 additional companies: Remington Rand, Ithaca Gun Company, Union Switch and Signal, and even the Singer Sewing Machine Company to build the exact same pistol using tooling and technical drawings supplied directly by Springfield Armory, rather than each company independently reverse engineering the design from scratch on their own. That shared tooling approach genuinely mattered for wartime interchangeability too, since a soldier issued replacement parts in the field needed those components to fit correctly regardless of which specific company's factory had actually stamped and machined the original pistol they carried into combat. Remington Rand, a company better known for building office typewriters, ultimately produced more M1911A1 pistols than any other wartime manufacturer, delivering roughly 900,000 units at the lowest per unit cost of the entire program. Singer's own contribution tells a genuinely different story entirely. since the sewing machine company completed just 500 pistols under an early 1940 educational contract before shifting its wartime production capacity toward other priority military equipment instead, leaving those 500 Singer-made 1911s the rarest genuine wartime variant ever produced. Collectors today regard an authentic Singer 1911-01 as the genuine holy grail of the entire platform, with confirmed original examples routinely selling at auction for well into six figures specifically because so few were ever built compared to the roughly 1.9 million total wartime pistols the combined five-company program eventually delivered across every contracted manufacturer. Union Switch and Signal, a company that normally built railroad signaling equipment rather than firearms of any kind, still managed to deliver roughly 50,000 pistols before its own contract was trimmed to prioritize other wartime production needs, making its own guns considerably rarer than the Remington Rand or Colt production runs that dominated the overall wartime total. If you've ever wondered how a sewing machine company built one of the rarest, priciest pistols in collecting, that's the kind of unlikely history this channel keeps digging into. Subscribe if you want the next one explained the same way. 1911 Type 4, the Commander. The U.S. military launched a fresh round of pistol trials in 1949, specifically seeking a lighter, more compact sidearm for officers, setting strict new requirements capping any submission at 7 inches overall length and 25 ounces total weight, dimensions the original steel-framed M1911A1 simply couldn't meet no matter how aggressively engineers tried trimming material from the existing all-steel design. Those specific weight and length limits reflected genuine post-war military thinking about officer equipment too, since planners increasingly valued reducing the total physical burden a support officer carried into the field over simply maximizing raw stopping power the way earlier infantry-focused sidearm requirements traditionally had. Colt's resulting submission, chambered in 9mm with a shortened 4.25-inch barrel and, genuinely groundbreaking for the era, an aluminum alloy frame, lost that specific military competition but became the first mass-produced large-frame pistol, built with an aluminum frame once Colt moved it into full commercial production the following year regardless. Colt eventually introduced an all-steel version too, renaming the original aluminum-framed pistol the Lightweight Commander specifically to distinguish it from that newer all-steel Combat Commander variant sitting alongside it in the same product catalog. That successful commercial pivot, turning a rejected military prototype into one of Colt's most enduring civilian product lines, proved a shorter, lighter 1911 could genuinely succeed in the marketplace even after failing to win the specific government contract it was originally designed to capture in the first place. The Commander's original 9mm chambering also marked a genuine first for Colt too, since the company had never previously offered any large-frame pistol in that specific European caliber, a chambering choice directly tied to the 1949 trial's own stated preference for a cartridge more compatible with NATO ammunition standardization efforts already underway at the time. 1911 Type 5, the Officer's ACP. Colt pushed the compact 1911 concept even further in 1985 with the Officer's ACP, shrinking the barrel down to just 3.5 inches and trimming the grip frame itself shorter to reduce magazine capacity, creating the smallest genuinely concealable 1911 variant the company had built up to that specific point in its own long product history. That shortened grip frame represented a real engineering departure from the Commander before it, since simply cutting the barrel down while keeping a full-length grip only solves half the concealment problem a genuinely compact carry pistol actually needs to address for comfortable daily wear under ordinary clothing. Reliability engineers found that shrinking a 1911 slide and barrel down that dramatically created real functional challenges too, since the platform's locked breech recoil system was originally tuned around a specific barrel length and slide mass, meaning a compact officer-sized pistol demanded genuinely careful spring and geometry tuning that a simple proportional scale-down of the original government model could never achieve on its own. Despite those engineering hurdles, the officer's ACP format proved popular enough that nearly every major 1911 manufacturer eventually built their own version of that same ultra-compact concept, cementing a genuine third standard size category alongside the full-length government model and the mid-sized Commander that had already established the platform's two original standard profiles decades earlier. Concealed carry buyers specifically embraced the officer-sized platform, once the broader concealed carry permit movement expanded dramatically across American states throughout the following decades, giving traditional 1911 enthusiasts a genuinely viable everyday carry option that didn't require abandoning the platform's classic single-action trigger feel entirely. 1911. Type 6. The modern clone manufacturer. Colt's original patents on the 1911 design expired decades ago, opening the exact locked breech mechanism and overall pistol architecture to any manufacturer willing to invest in the tooling required to build their own version. Springfield Armory, Kimber, and Sig Sauer all built substantial standalone product lines entirely around that same open 1911 platform, each company adding its own specific refinements, extended beavertail grip safeties, upgraded sights, or match-grade barrels, while still keeping the fundamental Browning-designed operating system completely unchanged underneath those individual improvements each manufacturer chose to prioritize differently. That genuine design flexibility, letting each manufacturer differentiate their own product without ever touching the platform's proven core mechanism, explains why the 1911 market has stayed genuinely competitive and diverse for decades rather than consolidating around a single dominant manufacturer the way some other firearm categories eventually did. That genuine interchangeability across brands, magazines, holsters, and aftermarket parts largely working across the entire 1911 ecosystem, regardless of which specific company actually manufactured a given pistol, has kept the century-old platform commercially viable well into an era dominated by far newer striker-fired polymer pistol designs. Ruger entered that same crowded market considerably later than most established competitors with its own SR-1911 line, proving genuine ongoing manufacturer demand for the platform persisted even decades after critics had repeatedly predicted the aging 1911 design would finally fade from serious commercial relevance against newer competing designs. That continued manufacturer investment genuinely surprised many industry observers too, since striker-fired polymer pistols had already captured the overwhelming majority of new handgun sales by the time Ruger finally committed resources to its own 1911 program, a genuine bet that enough dedicated single-action enthusiasts remained to justify the considerable tooling investment a whole new product line demanded. 1911. Type 7. The Double Stack. 2011. Texas manufacturer STI, now rebranded as Staccato, pioneered a genuinely significant departure from Browning's original single-stack magazine design during the 1990s, widening the 1911's grip frame specifically to accept a double-stack magazine holding considerably more rounds than any traditional single-stack 1911 magazine ever could manage within that same original grip envelope. That wider grip, commonly called a 2011 to distinguish it from the traditional single-stack 1911 pattern, lets shooters keep every ergonomic advantage the classic 1911 trigger and grip angle already offered while finally matching the magazine capacity modern polymer striker. Fired pistols had already made the new competitive standard across nearly every shooting discipline. Staccato's own P-Series double-stack pistols eventually earned genuine law enforcement adoption too, with the U.S. Marshals Special Operations Group and over 280 individual police departments nationwide officially approving the platform for duty use. A real institutional validation well beyond the competition shooting circuit where the double-stack 1911 concept first proved itself. That same Staccato P also reached genuine mainstream pop culture recognition too, appearing as the sidearm of choice in the third John Wick film, introducing an entirely new generation of moviegoers to a fundamentally modernized take on a pistol design already over a full century old at that point. That pop culture moment arrived at a genuinely perfect time for the double stack category too, since competitive shooters and defensive pistol buyers alike had already spent years quietly building demand for exactly this kind of high-capacity 1911 platform before mainstream film audiences ever got their own first real introduction to the concept on the big screen. 1911. Type 8. The competition race gun. Competitive shooters chasing every possible speed advantage in disciplines like USPSA and IPSC pushed the 1911 platform into genuinely extreme custom territory, building purpose-specific race guns featuring compensated barrels, extended magazine wells, oversized controls, and dramatically lightened triggers. No factory pistol would ever ship with directly from the manufacturer. Those compensated barrels vent propellant gas upward through machined ports specifically to fight muzzle rise during rapid strings of fire, letting a skilled shooter track their sights and fire genuinely faster follow-up shots than an unmodified 1911's naturally sharper recoil impulse would otherwise allow across an entire competitive stage under real-time pressure. Custom gunsmiths built an entire specialized cottage industry around this exact competition niche, hand-fitting components to tolerances considerably tighter than any factory assembly line typically bothers achieving, since a competition shooter's own livelihood and match standings genuinely depend on a pistol performing with total, repeatable consistency across thousands of competitive rounds fired over an entire season of matches. That same demand for hand-fitted precision created genuine career opportunities for a whole generation of dedicated 1911 gunsmiths too. Specialists who built their entire professional reputation around understanding exactly how far Browning's century-old design could be pushed before its fundamental reliability finally started to suffer under that same aggressive customization. That same race gun development work eventually filtered back down into mainstream commercial 1911 products too, with features like extended magazine wells and lightened triggers gradually becoming standard options on factory pistols built for buyers who wanted a taste of that same competition. Proven performance without commissioning a fully custom build themselves from a dedicated gunsmith. USPSA's own open division specifically allows genuinely unlimited modification too, meaning the most extreme race guns competing at that level often bear only passing resemblance to Browning's original 1911 architecture beyond the basic locked breech operating principle still technically holding the entire design together underneath all that custom machining and aftermarket component work. That contrast between a stock, unmodified 1911 and a fully built open division race gun genuinely illustrates just how far a single mechanical concept can stretch across more than a century of continuous refinement. From a Spartan military sidearm to a highly specialized competition instrument built for one single purpose alone.